Critical race theory is not being taught in K through 12 systems. The truth about critical race theory in the Department of Education. Let's talk about it. Welcome to DEI Truth Telling Tidbits with Dr. Ashley Gaddy Robbins. I'm a speaker, scholar, and your DEI Truth Teller. In light of 1,300 people losing their jobs at the Department of Education this week, I think it is imperative for us to talk about all the noise and the chatter that has been happening around education, including critical race theory. Here's what they're saying critical race theory is. Critical race theory is education that is teaching children and kids to be unpatriotic because they are saying America is bad. It says that white people are wrong and white people are racist. And so it is very exclusionary and very harming to our country's history. So much, in fact, that books have been banned, courses have been removed from the K through 12 curriculum. Let's talk about what critical race theory actually is. Critical race theory is a framework, and I think that's very important to understand. It is a framework by which we practice that was formed in the late 1970s by multiple scholars, including Kimberly Crenshaw. It originated because in this value of equal opportunity and justice for all, there was a missing piece, and it was the realities around race. There are 5 tenets to critical race theory, and I think this is very important to really dive into because once you know what they are, you might be like, so what's the harm? The first tenet is that critical race theory acknowledges that racism is an integral part of the United States. Yeah. The second tenet is that critical race theory rejects the dominant legal and social norms around neutrality, objectivity, and colorblindness. In other words, yes, we do need you to recognize what is actually happening in the world. Choosing to remain neutral or choosing not to see race is not an option. Third, critical race theory actually rejects a historical-only approach to things. It looks at both the contextual and history in order to see how things are functioning. This actually would help the argument for people who are saying, stop talking about the past all the time. Critical race theory says we don't. We look at the past and present to look at the outcomes of the future. Here's one of my favorites. Number 4, critical race theory understands the importance of experiential knowledge that comes from various standpoints. That means your lived experience is important here. Stories are important here, not just from one lens, but from the intersections of multiple lenses. And finally, critical race theory actively works to eliminate racial oppression. Ding, 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 ding. For everyone who is saying, stop talking about race, racism is over. CRT says, well, 1, we have to talk about it, but 2, we also want it to be over. That's the goal. So when we really break down the 5 tenets of CRT and we understand what the framework is, here's what we have to debunk. 1, critical race theory is not being taught in K through 12 curriculum. I can assure you that no one is teaching about Kimberly Crenshaw and critical legal studies and the 5 tenets of CRT to a 4th grader. Now, what critical race theory is saying is that we should expand the curriculum to bring more stories and data and true information about the totality of our history. If we're being honest right now, and I can attest to this because I am a mom, elementary school kids are getting the big 4. They're getting Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, MLK, and Obama. Y'all, our history is so much more than those 4 wonderful individuals. And last but not least, critical race theory is not saying that white people are bad. Critical race theory is not saying that we should not be unpatriotic. All it is saying is that we should talk about the truths of how race has happened in the society, and therefore we should work to eliminate it. No one is bad here. No one is trying to exclude anyone. We're just naturally truth tellers. As this conversation has gotten bigger and bigger and louder, this has now come at the intersections of the Department of Education. Eyes are on education now because of things like quote unquote DEI, quote unquote critical race theory. I would argue that this has led into the reason why layoffs have occurred in this administration. I hope this was helpful. Continue to stay tuned for more. Peace.